Okay. Um, Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Strength Club podcast. Right now, you're seeing Adrian deadlift. What this show is going to be, what this channel has been for the most part, is mostly a form checks program. I'm Alex Casari. I work for Starting Strength. I'm a starting strength coach. Um, Essentially, what we've done here for years now. How many years has it been, Mick? Probably 3, 4 years.
Oh, I reckon it's probably closer to five, four
Closer
or
to
five.
5 years, almost
Yep.
ancient history, is we've been going through the user's form checks through the Starting Strength app. So if you're watching this video, you're probably here from the Starting Strength app, from the email list, from the Facebook group, from the forums, from subreddit, anything like that. And then you're interested in the lifts. Technically, you're interested in what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Essentially, what we've done on this channel across many years. Chase and I, Chase was a co-host on the show for many years. Um,
Rusty.
Rusty was a co-host on the show for many years. Mick, a permanent co-host. Right now, Mick is going to be a disembodied voice. I'm Alex Casari. I'm a starting strength coach in the DC area, available for in-person coaching and online coaching. And then today, what we're going to do, I think we have 5 or 6 videos to get through from recent users from the Starting Strength app. We're going to get through their videos, see what they're doing right, see what they're doing wrong. So if that's of interest to you, please continue watching. Right now, we have Adrian here doing very slow descent, touch and go deadlifts in some running shoes. So we have a lot to get from, a lot to change in this. Do we have any other details from Adrian?
No, that's there were no other notes with this guy's.
So he was just saying, this is my deadlift. I think
Yeah.
this is 275, but the two bumpers are of different sizes. So that could be 185 with another 25 on the outside. Could be 275. There's a lot going on in this video. We'll just touch on his gear and his equipment first, because that's kind of a setup issue that we can change sort of pretty easily. The straps, he may not need the straps. Frankly, he could switch to an over under grip. He could switch to a hook grip. This is relatively lightweight. So now is sort of the time to start learning this. And based off of how he's moving, how fast he's moving, how he's able to control the descent for the most part, this is still relatively light for him. If you can control a deadlift descent like that, it's really not that heavy, which means he probably doesn't need those straps. So I'd get rid of the straps. As for his belt, the tapered belt design, where it's really thin on the front and then relatively large on the back, it sort of misunderstands the belt. The belt is meant to provide support for your abdomen. It's for the abdominal muscles, the front section. It's not really providing much mechanical support against flexion or against rounding on the backside. Okay, so the backside, nothing is really going. It's not soft. You have your spine there, you have your erectors. Nothing really is going to move that much. On the front, that's where you want the physical support. So if you're going to use this belt, quote, correctly, you'd actually flip it around. Pardon me. That way you have more assistance against the front side, the relatively flexible side. No one's ever going to do that, which is why we use relatively thin uniform belts. So a 2-inch belt or 3-inch belt, something like that. So I would ditch the belt, get a good one that's of uniform size. Generally, with these sorts of belts, they provide like emotional support for the lifter on the backside, and then they just sort of dig into the front. So frankly, they don't really help. The third thing I would say is the running shoes. We definitely don't want anyone lifting really heavy in big foamy running shoes. The finding your balance point is just difficult when you're standing on a big piece of foam. So if you look at your lifters, if you look at running shoes, they're going to be wildly different. The lifting shoes are going to be a hard, non-compressible sole. It's basically going to be like your, piece of wood under your foot. Whereas the running shoes really flexible. Even a lot of times, if the lifter looks really stable in a running shoe, their foot is still shifting back and forth in the shoe. It's just too soft to be of any use. So those are the first 3 things I would fix. Technically, as for the deadlift, I would have him go to YouTube, type in a quick tip for setting down the deadlift, Phil Meggers, and it's going to talk about how to descend on the deadlift. It's just the reverse of the 5-step process that we use on the way up. And then what that's going to be is going to be looking down in between your shoelaces, pushing your butt backwards in space, and then punching the bar down over your shoelaces. Okay. So what we see here, we'll wait for this next descent. So he's keeping his eyes and his nose up. He's bending at the hips first, which is good, but he's having it go really slowly down his thighs. And then as soon as it taps the floor, okay, he's pulling it back up again. And then he's sort of breathing through this motion. If anyone ever does like a tap and go deadlift, for the most part, unless they're trying to get as many reps as possible, kind of CrossFit scenario, when people do this, they tend to just dislike the bottom position because it sucks. You have to get really tight. It's really hard. The bar feels heavy. So they're like, hey, I already got tight once. Do I have to get tight again? Do I have to get set up for the deadlift again? Can I just bounce it off the floor? Can I just tap it off the floor? Something like that. So this is a lifter who just dislikes that bottom position, and they think that tap and go is fine, and the descent is really wonky. So what we would do here is we would fix the descent. Butt goes back, eyes go down, bar punches straight down to the shoelaces, and then we would say, hey, you need to reset the bar every single time. You need to reset your brace. So some lifters who are particularly sticky on this, I'll tell them to physically keep your palms on the bar, but open your fingers up, close them again, and then go. And that'll give them enough time to kind of breathe for a second, reset the brace, and get back into it. But I don't really think he would need to deload much to get these technical points done. The deadlift will feel easier for him once he's not doing a tempo descent. So I'd say even 255 would be a fine starting point. Do it correctly, and then he should be fine to add. I would say 5 pound increases. I think 10 pound increases would probably be too aggressive. So I would say go back to 255 and then 260 and so on and so forth, and then work your way back up from there. The ascent is pretty decent. He's trying to extend his back. He's not doing the best at it, but mostly that's just because he's rushing. We don't really have a good example of his back extension because he only tries it once on the front end on rep 1, and then he just never tries again after that. So I think that should be it for Adrian.
So this is Chris. And he said, hi Alex and Mick, many thanks for looking at my set previously. That video was meant to be a single set of 5 reps at 140 kilograms. Have taken on board what you said and tried to incorporate the steps you advised. One set of 2 reps at 150 kilograms. He said, I can definitely feel my upper back working on the initial movement a lot more. Hope this angle is better than last time. I'm very grateful for your time and advice. Thank you, Chris.
This angle, honestly, Chris, is still a struggle. You may just not be able to see well, which is the issue. Chris's face is entirely obscured. This is good OPSEC, everybody, by the way, for using the internet, just to completely obscure your face. Yeah. So I would say the first thing that's shooting out to me is the grip and the leg relationship. So if you can pause it, it's right there. Go down a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So his knees are being shoved out. But they could stand to be shoved out a little bit more. And then they're running into the arms, I would say. I would probably widen the grip up just a hair here, but I would also pull his legs in. So I would say start by pulling your heels in together, Chris. Right now your feet are basically straight ahead like this. We want them so that they're like this. Okay, so not like the squat where they're all the way out here. So like the squat angle would be like this. The deadlift angle, we don't want it to be straight together. We want it to be slightly tilted out. So I would pull your heels in like an inch on each side to start, and then that you'll be able to shove your knees out a little bit easier there. And then I would probably widen the grip just a hair to give your legs more room. And then you keep playing it, Mick. Okay. I would eat some more food and then do more arm work for sure. Arms are tiny as hell, dog. Yeah, frankly, that may be priority number 1. Yeah, it seems like you're attempting to squeeze your chest up. I'd be curious to see what your back extension looks from the side. I think this is a little bit more of a rounded back pull, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's not really what we're going for. Feeling your upper back off the floor, it's not necessarily bad. It's not really a bad thing. Most of that is related to like how it's working, how the deadlift is working within your training program. So like, did you already do press? Is your upper back already tired? Is your upper back tired from holding the bar on the squat? Did you do chin-ups the previous day or pull-ups the previous day? Like, what's sort of the fatigue slate for your upper back? That's definitely related to your deadlift. So if you're just deadlifting, let's say you have a 1 exercise program, and then you're like, all of a sudden, my upper back is becoming a bottleneck, then it may be form related as to what you're doing with your upper back. But you're not doing anything weird with it right now. Most people, almost everyone's shoulders are in protraction at the bottom of the pull. It's not a bad thing at all. The one thing I will say you're doing weird at the top of the rep is this little shrug. So right here. Whoop. And then we'll see it more dramatically on rep 2. Yep. Right there. You see that little bounce that you're doing? You're kind of pulling your shoulders up and back. Okay, there's no need to do that. The bar is already at lockout once your hips and your knees are extended. Okay. So there are like some red light scenarios where someone's kind of really rounded forward and then their entire back is rounded. And then since their entire back is rounded, they can't really extend their hips. This is why we don't advocate for a rounded back pull, or one of the reasons we don't advocate for a rounded back pull. But you'll see this occasionally. If you have no control of your spine, okay, your entire back is rounded, it's very difficult to get that final hip extension. And you'll see that sometimes in powerlifting competitions if someone starts a really rounded back pull, they'll basically extend their knees, extend their hips as much as they can, and they'll like slowly unfurl their back, and it'll take like a fucking 2 seconds, and then they'll kind of get it straight enough, and then the judge will be like, okay, you finished the deadlift. You don't need to do that. So if we go back to the video, Mick, and then go to rep 2, amazing. Still decent speed off the floor, but your hips and knees are extended. I don't need you to like kind of pop and roll your shoulders back. Okay. So if you've been doing that habitually, that may be causing the upper back irritation. If it just feels like normal upper back muscular soreness, I don't really care. That's totally fine. If it's starting to feel like, oh man, my neck is feeling irritated, my shoulders are feeling irritated, in between my shoulder blades are feeling irritated, then I would start saying, hey, like really, really don't do this. Don't try to do it intentionally though. The traps are functioning isometrically in the deadlift. So they're getting load the entire time, as soon as the bar is an inch off the floor all the way to the top. So it's not like you need extra trap involved by doing a little shrug. Okay. So they're making, your arms are hanging there, your traps are here, they're receiving isometric tension the entire time. They're not in need of more work on the deadlift. Okay. If you want to add some shrugs afterwards, that's a separate deal. But next time you do your deadlifts, try to get it from a 45-degree offset angle, and then farther back as well. Just move the camera back, 2 or 3 yards, 45-degree offset angle. The big thing we need to see is back extension. From this video is a good angle to check like the stance, the arm width, seeing that little shrug at the top. But otherwise, it's not the best. What else do we got, Mick?
We have Tom Lefebvre, which I believe this is the guy that used to send us those videos where he was deadlifting in the woods with a rock and a mattress.
I think it is.
A coil
I
mattress.
I recognize that name.
Seems like he's back in civilization.
He is. I think he's gained some weight. This is an interesting squat, Tom Lefebvre.
So he said he's recovering from a shoulder surgery and having trouble with his low bar position. Anything?
Yeah, that's absolutely him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so shoulder surgery. I'm always curious whenever people who are at this sort of age bracket get shoulder surgery, kind of like a big why. I'm not sure. I really wonder what it was. Did he say which shoulder surgery?
No, I didn't say.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of times people will just be like, "Oh, doctor, I have shoulder pain," and you see this with knee pain too. I have an older female client. She's mid-60s. She's a triathlon lady. She runs triathlons, just to make everybody in the audience feel bad. And then she's having some knee pain because, of course, she's in her 60s and she's like doing road miles and bike miles and swimming all the time. And then the doctor was like, "Oh, this is definitely patellar tendonitis. Like, here's this whole thing." And it's like you go into the doctor and you're like, "My knee hurts," and they're like, "I diagnose you with knee hurting." It's like patellar tendonitis, and you're like, "Great." What do I do with this information? And then she goes to the PT and she does all this, and like everybody's recommending surgery to her as opposed to just like load management, making sure the knees are relatively not worked, like trying to program through it, more recovery things. Like no one talked to her about recovery, no one talked to her about programming, no one talked to her about anything. They were just like, we probably need surgery. A lot of shoulder surgeries are like this, in particular with like labrum injuries. People are like, "Oh no, like something wrong with my labrum. I need to have surgery on it because otherwise my shoulder won't function." If something that's like, "Oh hey, like my supraspinatus fell off, like my subscap fell off, something in my rotator cuff is just totally gone. Like, oh, my shoulder was dislocated." Sure, totally understand, but I wonder if we did kind of like a pie chart of like what shoulder surgeries are done, how many of them would be like labrum repairs that were kind of, really not necessary. As for Mr. Lefebvre, I would say the big thing that we're looking for, and it's not the easiest to see right now because we have this vertical video, and then the plates are facing inwards. But you can see the plates rolling. If you look at the far side, you can see kind of the letters and the numbers turning around here. That's a pretty good indicator for me that the the upper back position and the bar position are a little bit wonky. I believe he's trying to force himself into straight wrists. And when you force yourself into straight wrists, it's just a big external rotation demand on the shoulder. If you're having a problem doing that, there's no obligation to do it, particularly if we're seeing the wrists kind of rolling up, the elbows rolling up, and then that's causing the bar or the plates to spin a little bit. Okay. So one thing I would try for right now, and then eventually you can work your way back. So let's say you do your warm-up sets with this grip, and then when it comes time to your working sets, you put your thumb around the bar and you let your wrist bend like this. Okay. That's going to reduce the amount of external rotation demand on your shoulder, and then things are going to be a little bit more comfortable, So like if I'm right here, okay, and then I need my wrist to be relatively straight, I have to crank my shoulder all the way open like this. But if I have my wrist bent, my shoulder can stay a little bit more forward, my elbow can be a little bit more forward, but I can still reach back for the bar. Okay. So it's like my shoulders are always screwed up from judo or from wrestling. So for me, that straight wrist thing, it's totally gone. It's like it's very impractical given the health for my shoulders. If you're just coming out of shoulder surgery, there's no demand for you to crank your shoulders all the way open like that. Okay. That may take months and months and months to kind of regain the flexibility and the mobility to do that. So if it's interrupting your working sets, I would say change the grip on your working sets. One thing I've had a lot of success with recently for a lot of my lifters who have shoulder issues is talon grip. I don't know where the term talon grip came from, but essentially it's dropping your pinky off the bar. So your thumb and your pinky are going to be on one side, and then your fingers are going to be there on the other. And then it allows you, so instead of having your wrist angle be like this, you can turn your fingers out like this. You just have the top three on the bar. Okay. And then mobility wise on the wrist, on the shoulder, on the elbow, it's way easier. Okay. Even there are some giant guys who they just put two fingers on it. When you have a decent upper back on you, which you do, Tom, you can kind of see the shape on his upper back. When you have a decent upper back on you, you don't really need to be too concerned about where the bar is sitting. The bar is just kind of grooved in on your posterior delt, and then you really don't have to worry about it. The hands are just clasps that are just hanging the bar, just kind of securing the bar on there. So if you have someone who has like a featureless upper back, or they have a very round upper back, you absolutely need a lot of pressure to keep that shit on there. Okay. But if you're able to retract your shoulders, and then you can feel a pretty defined shelf there, the bar is just sitting on that shelf. Okay. And when you're leaning over, that bar is not going to be at risk of, sliding anywhere. So I think your grip may be doing more harm than good. Allow that timeline to extend, be really gentle in terms of your expectations for mobility and flexibility there. Let your wrist bend, check out talon grip, see if that's more comfortable, play around with that. Go back to the video, Mick, if you can. Otherwise, I would say the big thing is what you're doing with your brace. It seems like you're really trying to extend through the whole squat. So on the way up, we're seeing this sort of big shift in your pelvis. We're seeing basically just like a lot of movement around the spine. I want to see the movement coming from your knees and from your hips. I do not want to see the movement basically at the back of your shirt. So he's wearing an excellent shirt for you, dear viewer, to kind of understand what's going on. Basically, look under his elbows and then above his butt, and then see how the wrinkles in his shirt change, right? So the shirt is stretching out, and then it's wrinkling, stretching out, and then it's wrinkling. That's a really good visual determination or a visual cue for you to say, okay, he's probably doing something wonky with back extension. I think we have some good videos on this. I would say, I think one of them is stop overextending your back in the squat with Grant Brogy. Another one, I think if you just look up back extension squat starting strength, you'll find a few of them because we've made a bunch of videos on them over time. But what we want you to do basically is just sort of pull your ribs down to your belly. We want you to lock your abs in place, and then that's going to lock your spine in place. And then the rest of the movement is your leg about your pelvis. Okay, so your femur is moving, okay, in your pelvis, right? So let's say like if this is the socket, okay, and then this is the femur. The femur is moving. Okay, I don't need to move my pelvis to move my femur, right? I can pick my leg up here right now and then not move my spine, right? I'm not moving my pelvis, just my leg is moving. So in his situation, he's letting his pelvis move on every descent, and then every ascent, the whole thing is sort of rotating and flexing back and forth. So Tom, I would say in terms of cues, think pull your ribs down to your belly, pull your ribs down to your belt. Okay, I try to lock that into position. And then when I'm bracing, I'm thinking I can still keep my chest up, and I'm pulling my belly in, I'm pulling my ribs down, and then lock that in. I think you may need to widen your stance a little bit too. It's hard to tell from this angle. But the big thing I would say, focus on bracing, pull your ribs down to your belt, widen your stance slightly, I think. But we would need more videos to confirm for that. Any other notes from Tom?
No, nothing at all.
Okay, all right. What do we got next?
We have Marco, also no notes with this
Marco.
video.
Marco Rubio. This may actually be Marco Rubio. Like
This guy looks like a
haircut,
giant. This guy looks like a giant.
physique, hair, physique. Yeah, he is. This is a tall lad. He's not actually. You're right. Yeah, he's not little Marco. He is not little Marco. Yeah. So this is a. If we just pause at the top real quick, by the way. So this is a good example of someone who has the shoulder mobility and flexibility to maintain this position. I may actually contest that this bar is slightly low on his back. Okay, because remember, if we reach across our shoulder here, right? If you could go to me, Mick, real quick. Okay, so when we're finding our bar position, we're reaching across our shoulder all the way to the outside. I'm not reaching in towards my neck. I'm all the way out here, and I'm finding that bony ridge. I'm finding the spine of my scapula, and then I'm just sort of bouncing up and down over it, this horizontal bony ridge. Right under it, that's where we want the bar to be. So if you see it, if I'm pretending to hold the bar like this, there we go. If I'm pretending to hold the bar, it's not actually that low. A lot of people, including this guy, you see it, it may actually look like the bar is riding like relatively lower, like down towards the bottom of his posterior deltoid. I think he may be riding it a little bit low. So let's go back to the video. Yeah, I think this bar is low for sure. And let's see how it plays out. Squatting a little high, staying very vertical. Let's see if he loosens up. That's rep 2. Maybe a tiny bit lower, seeing some roll in the plates. Okay. We're getting a whole set of 5 here. That's nice. Okay, we're racking. If I saw this guy in person, I would definitely say, "Oh, are you trying to do starting strength?" Just based on the outfit alone, I would say. When I see people with high, if you have your shorts on high, your shirt is tucked in,
Yeah.
you have knee sleeves on and squatting shoes. I've done this before. I've commercial gyms that I work out and that I don't work out. I'll go there, and I'll see people like clearly trying to do starting strength. I'll be like, "Hey, you trying to do starting strength?" I'm right like 100% of the time. It's
Okay.
the
Yeah. Go on.
Go ahead, Mick.
No, I was going to say, what if you had to guess what's in the bottle that's on the safety? There's a bottle of white something on the safety. Do you think it's liquid chalk, maybe?
I don't know because it's like clear looking. You know,
Have you
it
ever
doesn't
seen
look like
someone
white
with a
bottle.
bottle?
I don't
What
know.
would a starting
I was
strength
like,
guy having a tiny white bottle of clear liquid?
maybe hand sanitizer. Maybe
True.
I've never seen a liquid chalk bottle like that before.
It's probably a bottle of
Yeah,
ivermectin or something.
it could be. Yeah, I've absolutely no idea. But if I saw this guy in person, I absolutely would be like, "Oh, this is guy's in the starting strength fan club, man." If I see people with do-ins and then they're trying to squat, I'll see them. They'll try to do the grip, and I'll immediately be like, "Oh, he's trying starting strength. I see it. I see it." Um, but yeah, this is a really good example of a squat that we would like fix at a seminar or fix at a camp. It's like someone who's like trying to do a lot of things right, but it's just slightly off target. Okay, they're aiming in the right direction, but they're just kind of not hitting at the final target. This guy's tall, as Mick was noting. He's probably definitely over 6 feet tall. The legs are pretty long. The torso is pretty short. When we have long legs and a short torso, we kind of need to dissipate some of that torso length. We need to dissipate some of that leg length, kind of help out his torso angle. He needs to lean over a lot to get down to depth. So the first thing that we can do on that is widen the stance out and make sure the toe angle is pretty severe. Okay, so toe angle is, again, if our toes are pointed straight forward, that's like minimal or no toe angle. If they're super extreme like this, no, you can't do any athletic activity like that. We kind of want like a nice 40 degree toe angle. So his toe angle is okay right now, but his absolute stance width is narrow. And some of this may be the rack, because like if you look at his toe, his right toe in particular, like Yeah, he doesn't look like he has that much space on either side. This seems like a narrow rack in general. So like when you look, when he re-racks the bar, there's not terribly much space. So I would say widen the stance out, probably another 1.5 to 2 inches on each side, and then you're thinking about shoving your legs out. The legs are literally going out, and then your torso is squatting between your legs. So I'm dropping my torso between my legs. My legs are going on the both sides of my torso. Okay, that would be a good way to think about this. The other big thing for him is going to be understanding the hip drive concept. Okay. So when we're watching him ascend, he'll sort of pop out of the bottom just a little bit. Okay. So he's getting a bounce off of his knees, right? Getting a bounce off of his knees and his ankles. And then the bar speed is slowing down and it looks really shitty and then really hard. So we'll wait for an ascent right here. Descent pops. Okay. He's pulling backwards over the heels on that one. Yeah, that's a good example. It's just going to get worse and worse as that goes on. We're on to rep 3 here. Yeah, that's sort of imminent slowdown. Yeah. Okay. So this is pretty typical or sort of like classic chest drive or driving the bar up. When people are like, hey, push your head to the ceiling, look up to go up, drive the bar straight up, stand up under the bar. This is basically the chest drive model. Whenever the chest is being driven up, the knees tend to come forward. And when they tend to come forward, it means the hips are being taken out of the game. Your ass, your hamstrings, your back, they're way larger and relatively stronger than your quads are. So if you're doing a super knee dominant squat like this and your torso is staying relatively vertical, do not expect much from bar speed. Okay, particularly if the bar's in this low bar position. If you're doing front squats, a little bit of a different story. The mechanics tend to work out better. But for this, we need to figure out how hip drive works. What's this guy's name again, Mick? I'm sorry.
Marco.
This is Marco, right? Marco Rubio. Yeah, so Mr. Rubio, Secretary of State. Essentially, what we need to do is to figure out hip drive. Go to YouTube. I think it's called Fundamentals of Loaded Human Movement or Fundamentals of Human Movement, hip drive. Nick Delgadillo's in it. It's like an 18-minute video. It's an amazing propaganda piece by Starting to Strength. I love it. Essentially, it just shows a bunch of examples of what hip drive is. Hopefully, that'll visually help you kind of lock into what's going on. I think a big reason that you can't get your hip drive going right now is because you're squatting high. Okay. So just to sort of explain or to show you what hip drive is, pretend my hand is Marco's head, and then this is Marco's hips. Okay. If we see in the squat as you're ascending, okay, the head is going backwards and the hips are going forward like this. If it looks like it's going whoop, okay, here, this is that sort of chest-driven squat. And then if we went where they're looking at the video, we would see the plates rolling backwards. Okay, the letters and the numbers on the plates are rolling back towards behind him. Okay, that's generally indicative of him waving the head back. Okay, he's doing this, and then that's more of a chest-driven squat. Okay, what we want to see is the opposite. I want to see his hips lead the dance. The hips go up almost independently. The hips are down. The torso, to me, the head is here. Look at this relatively leaned over torso angle, and then the hips go up and the hips lead the whole dance. And then as you lock out, it's a pretty subtle finish. Okay. But the hips lead the dance. The hips start the movement. The hips start the movement, and then the torso angle gets slightly declined. Okay. So this is a very vertical torso angle. Torso angle is declining. We're here. The hips shoot up. And you notice my hand, it like dips slightly. This is what hip drive looks like. One really cheesy way to force this is in our teaching progression is we'll say, put your hands together like this, and then squat down and you put your elbows inside your knees. Okay. So you're squatting and you're doing this. That's my knee right there. Okay. So if you're watching this, squat down, hands together, put your elbows inside your knees, glue your elbows to your knees. So don't stand up, actually keep your knees in physical contact with your elbow, and then push your hips up to the ceiling. Okay. And you'll notice basically your torso angle is like this, and then this. That feeling is what hip drive is. Okay. So your elbows are still staying touching your knees, but then you're just shooting your butt up in the air. That's basically what hip drive is. That's the bottom portion of hip drive. Okay. Go back to the video, Mick. And then shoot to like rep 3 or something. Okay. So if we, again, we'll look at the letters on the plates, and then we'll notice that backwards roll. So he's leading with his chest. He's squatting relatively high. and then right there you see the plate starting to twist backwards a little bit. Okay, this is just a very chest-driven squat. We need to do the opposite of this, which is the hip-driven squat. I think a large portion of the fact that he's driving with his chest is that he's squatting a little bit high. It's very hard to get a good hip drive whenever you're not squatting deep enough. Okay, so I would say that's the big issue here. Yeah, you got a lot to fix. I would say don't worry about the upper back position too much. Fix that a little bit later down the road. Widen the stance, squat lower, and then hip drive. Watch the hip drive video. That's it. What else do we got, Mick?
All right. I butchered this guy's name, but I believe it is Anurag, Anurag. He said, "Good day." Very polite. What are you typing in?
I'm looking up that name. Okay, what do you think that name means?
What did the autocomplete say when you put the first couple of letters in?
What I think Anurag. All right.
Yep.
If you had to guess what the name means.
I have no idea.
It means attachment, devotion, passion, and eternal love.
Well, he's definitely got some passion going here in the deadlifts.
Can you imagine telling ladies that and being like, "You want to know what my name means?" Means passion.
Do you think the ladies in India are impressed with a 70-kilogram male deadlifting 130 kilograms?
That they fucking better be. My boy here, Anurag, is saying,
Anurag.
I don't.
So he says, "Good day. I am 70 kilograms male, 5'7", lifting 130 kilograms in the video. Please suggest if form needs correction. I think my low back is round. I completed 5 reps, but the video was stopped. Thank you. Thumbs up to starting strength."
Thumbs up back to you. Greetings from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. It would be funny if he's also in D.C. he may well be. I don't know. He may not actually be in India right now. But yes, eternal passion, eternal love. Yes, your lower back for sure is rounded. Mick, you can probably just pause the frame as he's getting set up and then see it. Yeah, so as he tensions into the bar, right there. Okay, so he's committing an pretty acceptable error. This is an error that we see all the time, but it is thinking that pushing your chest up or squeezing your pecs up will do anything to the lower back. In some people, it does. In a lot of people, it just totally doesn't. So, if we look at his upper back right now, relatively flat. If we look at his lower back right now, it's relatively rounded. What we want when we see lower back extension, your pelvis should actually rotate. Okay, so like if we think where your sit bones are, you can kind of reach down and feel them. If your sit bones and your butthole are aimed at the floor, your lower back is rounded. If you are aiming those up and back and behind you, okay, if you're showing off your butthole to the people behind you, then your lower back is going to be extended. Sometimes the belt can obscure this sensation for people, and then you can keep playing the video. Yep, super rounded as he actually gets to the pole. And now this is a good example of what I was talking about earlier with like having a hard time really finishing the deadlift. Okay. Yep. So it's rounded, and then you see how he has to take that second to like push his belly through and then get his spine to lock out. That means the back wasn't extended in the first place. Okay. So he's going from an entirely rounded back to a relatively straight back at lockout. So he's trying to extend his back here, but basically all that does is sort of squeezes his chest up a little bit, and his lower back doesn't move. Okay. When you're deadlifting, when you're deadlifting and you're setting up your lower back, it should feel as if your stomach is moving. Okay. If you don't feel any movement around your pelvis and around your stomach and around your lower back, you are not extending your lower back. Nothing is happening. There are plenty of people. I've had people who lift for years come to me for in-person stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh, hey, can you extend your back?" And they'll be like, "Oh, totally." And you'll look at them as they're getting set up for their deadlift, and then what they'll do is they'll just do this with their chest. They'll just squeeze their chest up a little bit. Their lower back will not move at all, right? And they'll still be very rounded. So, a few things that we like to do for this. There's the Superman drill. You can lay on your belly, right? So if you're laying prone on your belly, and then you need to pick your chest up and your knees up at the same time, so you kind of arch into like a dolphin or a seal shape like that. So you're on the ground, laying prone, your arms are extended overhead, and then you're arching up like this. You pick your knees up, you pick your chest up, and that's a good way to extend the lower back. The other one is the cat-cow drill. crudely called the sort of doggy style drill. So you're on all fours, wrestling, ref's position, and then you just push your belly down to the floor, and then you round your back up to the ceiling. Okay, so you push your belly to the floor, round your back up to the ceiling, and then you will feel your stomach moving. It should feel like your stomach, your lower back, your pelvis are rotating. That's how we know the lower back is actually doing something. Okay, in his video there, if you were to ask him, "Hey, do you feel any movement happening in this whole area?" He would probably say no. That means that nothing is happening. You're not actually extending your lower back, things like that. Go back to the video, Mick. So lower back extension, for sure, he's right. He's not actually doing it. I would get rid of the belt. I would take 30 kilos or 50 kilos off the bar, and then reset from there. He's hitching a little bit, but I think that would be fixed if he's actually extending the lower back correctly. And then the big thing is the descent. We talked about this with the first guy, whatever his name is, Adrian. Yeah, we talked about this with Adrian. Go to YouTube. Quick tip for setting down the deadlift, Phil Meggers. If you just look up like Phil Meggers deadlift quick tip, you'll find it. It essentially shows you a really reliable method of setting down the deadlift quickly. Okay, so instead of keeping your face cranked up, you're going to look down at your shoelaces. You're going to push your butt backwards in space, and you're going to punch the bar down directly to that spot. And I'm saying punch the bar down as opposed to slowly lower the bar, because we need you to do that quickly. Okay, so we don't want you doing like a tempo eccentric deadlift like this, because when you do that, you have to sort of squat the bar down, and then you have to have the bar ramp off of your thighs. You're keeping your chest vertical. You're kind of doing like a strongman hitch. We don't want that. Okay, we just want you to lower the deadlift. Yeah. Yep, we'll see it again, going really slow, 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 and then he drops it right there. Okay, so I would say fix the descent for the deadlift. Once you see it, you'll probably be able to figure out. You'll be like, oh, okay, I didn't know I was supposed to just lower the bar quickly. A lot of people think they need to lower the bar very slowly, and then that's what happens here. They'll be like, oh, well, I have to control the descent. This is the only way I can do it. You don't have to control the descent. It's a controlled fall. You don't need to slow the bar down on the way down. And in terms of the hitching and in terms of the back extension, I think that'll be fixed whenever he kind of gets the lower back in a better position. Yeah, I very rarely see people who have excellent lower back extension hitch unless they're doing it as a technique specifically on purpose. Okay, so I think the hitching should probably self-resolve, but do some lower back extension drills. Figure out what you're doing with that. You're setting up a little bit too far away from the bar, but that's a relatively minor sin as compared to what you've been trying to do with your back. Anything to add here, Mick, on this one?
No, all good.
Okay.
Keep going, Anurag. Send us another video when you've made those changes, and we'll check it out again.
Yeah, for sure. Also, this is kind of a weird gym. This is it's like office flooring. This looks like an office building.
I'm trying to read that sign on the wall. I think it says "No towel, no train."
No towel, no train.
Yeah.
Anurag, where is your towel? Apparently, they're just sweaty boys there.
Maybe that's the thing on his head. It doubles up as a.
Right. He's ramping it up.
I probably just offended a whole nation now with that little comment. But anyway.
So Devanagari, sometimes shorted to Anu, is a common Indian first name. Attachment, devotion, passion, eternal love. I did not give my son a sick name like this, sadly. I went with a normal name.
Oh,
damn.
Well,
okay. Is that it? That's all the videos?
Yeah, those are all the videos today. So, for everyone today who sent a video in, send us another video. We have 0 videos in the queue. So, if you send us another video, it will be on the next episode.
Be on the next episode. I'm assuming everybody here has already had the Starting Strength app. If you haven't, go and buy that. I'm in the DC area. I do coaching in Northern Virginia. Sometimes I'll drive into Maryland even if I'm paid enough. Mick, you don't know anything about Maryland, but just pretend it's a really shitty state. That's all the information you need to know. So to all of my Maryland people out there, sorry about your state. I'm in the Northern Virginia, DC area. I'm available for online coaching as well. Links will probably be somewhere in the description. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching.